It was the late 1800s in the highlands of Scotland, and a group of friends were on their annual hunting trip. The four of them grew up in the town of Applecross, and they had been hunting with each other since they were kids. Every year they'd get together, go to the woodlands, and they'd hunt one of the more prominent animals in Scotland, deer. After arriving at the cabin, they unpack and turn in early, getting ready for the next day's excursion. It's now the following morning, and the men wake up about an hour before dawn, optimistic to get the kill. The men were full of excitement, as this was their favorite time of year. But little did they know, that would change with the coming night. As they entered the wilderness, the four of them split up and went to their usual spots, getting settled in about a half hour before sunrise. As the bright beams of light began to peek over the horizon, the first gunshot rang out. First buck down. Good way to start the morning, they thought. A couple hours later, another rang out. Then another. Throughout the entirety of the day, they all got their fill. As good hunters do, they let the first deer lie and hunted the rest of the day. Right before dusk, they got out of their blinds and went and field dressed their kills. The fellows were ecstatic. They had never had that much luck on opening day, all of them having successful hunts. The type of deer was a red deer, small enough to throw over their shoulders and carry back to camp. After getting back to the cabin, they strung up their deer and began to celebrate around the open fire, passing around some scotch. Before you know it, they were all tuned up, having a good old time, singing and dancing. They had been partying for a couple hours when suddenly one of the men kind of stopped out of the blue. "Man, boys, wouldn't it be nice if each of us had a beautiful lady to keep us company?" "You got that right," one of them said. "I'll take a shot to that," said another. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, a wolf howls. Then a couple more chime in. "Sounds like four of them." No worries, boys. They should keep their distance. They probably just smell the blood of our take from today. But keep your arms ready." They were having a merry old time dancing away when something crashed in the nearby bushes. Assuming it's the wolves, they grab their rifles and make their way towards the sound. "Hey, get out of here!" one of them yells. "Pardon, apologies to you, gentlemen. We didn't mean to disturb you." A soft voice emerged from the darkness. "Who goes there?" one of them insisted. That's when four silhouettes began to form at the edge of the forest. The four of them looked at each other in bewilderment. They didn't know whether they were drunk or dreaming. But what seemed to be happening was four beautiful women appearing out of nowhere. And much to their surprise, these were four of the most beautiful Scottish women these men had ever seen. And when they stepped into the light of the fire, everything around them fell in silence. There was something in the air, and the men stood there dumbfounded, almost in a trance. This only lasted a few moments. They quickly snapped back to reality. "We were just passing through the forest, and we saw the light from your campfire, and figured maybe we could join you." Perplexed, three of the men look at the other in shock, as if he made a prediction of the future earlier that night. The silence that followed was almost eerie, as none of them knew exactly what to say. Suddenly, one spoke up and said, "Yeah, of course." They all look at each other, not sure what to think, and agree, "Yeah, why not?" The vocalist takes a seat, and one of the ladies walks over and sits next to him, while the other three stood up, ready to dance. So he continues. And in unison, the women grab the men's hand and lead them, dancing as if they had done it for thousands of years. And they danced and they danced. It seemed like for hours, the night endless. All of them laughing, having a jolly old time. The men continued to drink, letting their guard down as the night went on. That's when the vocalist seemed to notice something odd running down the arm of one of his friends. As he studied what he had spotted, he continued to sing, not wanting to break stride and cause alarm. "What is that?" he thought to himself as he studied it intensely. And then it hit him. "Oh my God, that's blood." A small red stream had crawled down to his friend's fingertips and was dripping on the ground. He seemed to have no idea. His heart began to race profoundly, but he kept his composure because he didn't want to give away his position. And as he peered at the other two friends, he saw again more blood. But his friends, still no clue. And he looked closely and saw the nails of the women digging into their arms. That's when he began looking the women up and down, studying them closely. When he saw them, their feet, which were black at the tips, and it was dark, so earlier he had just assumed they were shoes. But once he got a closer look, he realized they were hooves. It hit him like a ton of bricks. Babanshi. He had always thought they were just scary stories that their parents told them to keep them from wandering in the woods at night. Panic set in. He knew he needed to get out of there, but he couldn't show his hand because these things are lethal. They're vampires. He stands up. All right, my ladies, I'm gonna pass it to your friend for a second while I go fetch some scotch from the cabin. He stumbled back to the cabin, acting drunk, opened the door, and walked in. As soon as he knew he was out of sight, he made a beeline for the back door and headed to the horse stables. At first, he thought he might grab one of the horses and run for it, but he knew there was no escaping them, so it would have only been a matter of time where he would be caught. So he really did the only thing he could do, and he hid among the horses. He sat in the darkness and began listening to the rest of them around the campfire, singing and dancing, when abruptly, it stopped. Pure silence. He heard nothing but the slight crackle of the fire as it slowly died down. He couldn't help but wonder what was happening, so his curiosity got the best of him, and he peeked over the back of one of the horses. There were his three friends standing next to the fire in an almost zombie-like state, with blood pouring out of different parts of their body. And just a few feet away were the women. They were huddled in a small circle, as if doing some sort of seance. He could hear them whispering, but couldn't quite make out anything they were saying. Fear like no other sweeps over his body. Out of nowhere, one of them glances over at him. He ducks behind the horse and covers his mouth to keep himself from screaming. He calms himself down. After a few moments, he gets the nerve to take another look. As he peers over the horse, he sees. They lead the men who are walking in a trance back into the cabin, but there's only 3 women leading them. Where did you go, young gentleman? Where did you go? Don't you want to turn in for the night? He crawls on all fours as fast as he can to the back of one of the stables that has 2 different horses in it. He gets down and looks on at ground level. He can see her walking. Hello, where are you? Won't you come have another drink? Her voice seductive, as if casting a slight spell over him. But he snaps out of it and stays put, and that's when her tune changes.
Won't you come to dinner? We're hungry.
At that moment, he thought it was the end. But for some reason, she wouldn't come near the horses. Due to all the stress, he literally passes out and doesn't wake up till the next morning. He jolts awake and looks around, terrified. He realizes it's now daybreak as the sun is beaming through the cracks in the barn roof. The fellas, he thinks to himself. He gets up and sprints to the cabin, already knowing that the vampires are long gone. As he throws open the door, his worst fears are met. There his 3 friends lie, hands down by their side, and he can hardly recognize them. Their bodies covered in wounds, with 2 small puncture holes nearby where the babanche were feeding. He breaks down and cannot believe this is happening. It's his worst nightmare come true. These cryptids or creatures have been talked about throughout Scottish lore for thousands of years. They only come out once a year to feed, and they look for unsuspecting men who are longing for the company of beautiful women. So when his friend put it in the air and openly stated that he wished for the company of women, they came to his call. The only reason the vocalist survived is because he spotted his friends bleeding before the vampire next to him had the chance to make her move. And why he was able to survive in the stables is because the babanche do not like iron or metals of sort. It happens to be one of their only weaknesses. So their bits, their horseshoes, all of that were a factor. That's why he lived. This story in particular has been told from generation to generation. Of course, the version I read was much simpler. I put my own twist on it. But many from Scotland believe that these vampires do happen to exist. And Scotland lore isn't the only lore that contains vampires. Ancient Sumerians were strong believers in these creatures, and they are actually believed to be an alien entity. Remember when we did the Russia's Alien Book of Secrets, there was a vampire-like entity in the book. Many suspect that creatures like the chupacabra stem from these extraterrestrials. And I've heard from multiple sources that vampire-like extraterrestrials are still among us to this day, but there's a law against them feeding. If they do, they will either be executed and or kicked off planet. Over thousands of years, they've had to learn to satisfy their bloodlust in other ways. There's even as many as 23 verses throughout the Bible on this subject. In the Bible, God makes it clear he does not want the drinking or feasting on blood. And any man from the house of Israel or from the aliens who sojourn among them, who eats any blood, I will set my face against that person who eats blood and will cut him off from among his people. For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you on the altar to make atonement for your souls. For it is blood by reason of the life that makes atonement. Therefore I said to the sons of Israel, no person among you may eat blood, nor may any alien who sojourns among you eat blood. Pretty interesting stuff. It makes you wonder. I know it sounds far-fetched. I know it sounds crazy. But is it possible? Could vampires at least have existed at one time throughout history? I'm not going to say whether I believe 100% or not, but I'd say it's a resounding yeah. They could have easily existed at one point or another. I mean, think about it and consider the creatures all over Earth that consume blood. Very interesting, very intriguing. And this post, and I may do one more, was for all you people hitting me up about vampires lately. Y'all have been requesting it for quite some time. So I figured I'd start with this story. I figured it was really interesting and intriguing. What I found is the older the story, the chances are there's some sort of truth to it. So I hope you enjoyed, y'all. I'll come back with more. There is a story in ancient Sumerian lore about this as well. There's quite a few different peoples and cultures who have amazing, interesting stories pertaining to blood-sucking type demons or aliens. Again, hope y'all enjoyed the video as much as I enjoyed making it for y'all. Very cool, very intriguing stuff. Definitely something, another rabbit hole you can delve into and see what you find. Regardless, keep an open mind and, ultimately, just enjoy it. I appreciate y'all. Y'all are my people. I love you guys. Thank you. I couldn't do it without you. And I will see y'all around for some more videos to come. Thank you again. And stay in love always and stay in light. I am out.